Ladies and gentlemen, today we're comparing a 2024 Lotus Emira First Edition against my buddy Fenton's son, aka Zygreen, his 1991 Acura NSX. And from my memory, I feel like they're more similar than different in terms of the spirit, but today I'm going to answer the question, how similar or different are they truly? Because in terms of value, they're not too far off. That NSX is something like 70, 80K on the used market, and this one you can get right now new for right around 100, and used examples I've seen for around 95. Just like my car, we are on sport suspension, except normally you get Cup 2s, but the owner optioned the Goodyear Eagle F1s, which normally go with the Tour suspension, but he said he's going to be tracking this, get a separate set of wheels and tires that are not Cup 2s, so he figured he would do Goodyear F1s here. Just like the NSX, we have double wishbone suspension, both front and rear, and they're both powered by a Japanese V6. This one is the Toyota 2GR FE with an Edelbrock supercharger. It's a 3.5 liter, making 400 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque. Looks like he got the privacy glass as well on the engine cover. I kept mine clear. In terms of mods, we have StopTech red brake pads. Normally it comes with Ferodo DS2500s, which is what I have on my car. I tracked my car last weekend. Definitely not good for track work, but of course Ferodos are the dual purpose pad, which I think are fine for street, but definitely not for track. StopTech reds here. We have a short shift kit. We also have a third cat delete, which I am considering on my car, with the valve controller, but don't worry, we're gonna keep that mostly open. And for those curious, she is a little bit heavier than the Evora GT, by I think about 50-ish pounds. We're weighing in just around 3,200. NSX is about 200 pounds lighter. Oh. In the interior, we have the black Alcantara option. I went tan leather. Forgot to mention the Magma red with the red calipers, red on red, with black inside. Alcantara steering wheel. I went with leather on mine. The controller he added right here. It is a very special cabin. You have the exposed shifter linkages here. It's a very unique, bespoke interior. At least it feels that way, although the switchgear is Volvo because of the Geely connection. We're gonna put this into track mode. You can hear that valve open up. The short shifter is really short. I feel like the stock shifter already has medium throws, and now these are quite short. The first thing I notice is that the steering is lighter than my car, and that's because of the Goodyear Eagle F1s versus the Cup 2s. And also the brake pad, it's very soft at the initial travel. There's no bite at all, which it's a little bit unnerving. In my car, the stock brake setup, I just did a fluid flush. It has a little bit more solidity at the beginning of the travel. I always feel like double clutch downshifting into second in this car, just because the shifter can be a little bit finicky, although it's probably not necessary. So much feel through the chassis. Hydraulic power steering. It's only Lotus and McLaren still doing that in modern day. The red line on this engine is 6,800 RPM, which is one of my gripes, because it sneaks up on you fast, because just as it starts getting good, bam, red line. The sound builds and crescendos too late in the rev range, too close to red line. Comes with an LSD standard, and you gotta love that you can use the throttle to rotate this car a bit. Although you have to be mindful of the balance, because if you start getting on the throttle too early mid-corner, it will push. Great feedback through the wheel. right there. Front end is getting a little bit light, just starting to push ever so slightly. Was just driving some spiders here, and it's nice that the gears are shorter so that I can actually shift into third. Steering has a lot of feedback, although it feels a little bit muted compared to my car. I'm guessing that's the tire difference as well. But so dialed in, such a fun car to drive. I don't think these are actually great on track. I explain why, at least stock configuration. And you can see that in a separate video. But on the street, they are such a joy. So communicative, not too planted, willing to dance with you a little bit. And 400 horsepower, 3,200 pounds is perfectly adequate for canyon work. Mid-engine, double wishbone all four corners. It's nimble, it's willing to change direction. Is it as nimble as a Exige or a Lease? Obviously not. Those cars weigh 2/3 as much as this. Actually less than 2/3, sub 2,000 pounds. But they've really struck such a good balance between having it comfortable and livable while also making it feel so special and lively. The very interesting thing is that the car is both fun when you drive it slow and fast. And I think the reason is that it's highly communicative without beating you up. It's highly, I shouldn't say highly visceral, but it is visceral enough as well. The supercharger, right? That unique whine. The way you can see that supercharger bypass valve in the rear view, how communicative the chassis is while giving you what's happening with the car and on the road without beating you up like a Lotus Elise. I will say I actually prefer the OEM shifter. This might just take a little bit of time to get used to. But the throws are so short, it's almost a little bit incongruous with the rest of the inputs because the brake pedal does require a lot of travel. Clutch is also a medium-ish throw. But now, let's see how she compares to the 1991 Acura NSX that has been tastefully modified. 1991 Acura NSX, that's the NA1, and this one has been tastefully modified by Fenton. We're still powered by a 3-liter naturally aspirated V6, making 270 horsepower, 210 pound-feet of torque. The car is a bit lighter than the Emira at 3,000 pounds, so about 200 pounds lighter, although we do have double wishbone front and rear just like the Emira. And also, the engine is a V6 in the middle. Full mod list, as always, is down in the description, but things that you need to know: it has the JDM short gears, that's shortened 2nd through 4th gear. Type R final drive, that's 4.235 versus the stock 4.062. Has the Type R LSD, which stays locked for longer when turning into a corner due to the higher breakaway torque, and it should lead to more turn-in understeer, but also more corner exit traction. Jun lightweight flywheel, Mida short shift lever, and Type S replica knob. Sakebomb Öhlins Grand Touring, 8K in the front, 6K in the rear. Sakebomb AP Racing big brake kit in the front, and custom rear brake kit in the rear. I think it's a stock caliper. We're running Ferodo DS2500 pads with Motul 600. DS2500s are the same pads that the Emira comes in stock. That's what my car is currently on. And we have these, of course, Volk TE37s in mag blue with the silver, very JDM, very nice. And they're wrapped in Continental ExtremeContact Force 225 in the front and 275 section width in the rear. We've got a Pride V2 RFL exhaust standing for really fucking loud, as you're gonna see. And this was a car that actually took me some time to warm up to. The reason being, The car is from the early 90s, so when you drive it and compare it to modern vehicles, it's going to feel a lot older. And that means a lot of things are actually going to be worse, but when you modify it and you do things like the shortened gears, I think that was actually one of the biggest things, then it really helps quite a bit with the driving experience. So, 5-speed manual transmission, Momo steering wheel, gotta love it. Unassisted rack, nice and heavy. A lot of people complain about that, but I mean, especially on this car with the engine in the rear, not too much weight on the front, it's not too heavy. We're getting some beeps because of the temperatures, which are a bit hot. I'm gonna drive it easy at the beginning. Now, similar to the Emira, the seating position is actually very low. You can tell just based on how low I am relative to the road. But when I look relative to the car, it feels like I'm higher than I should be. The reason being low roofline here, and also great visibility. You guys know the F-16 fighter cockpit inspiration for the visibility, the big open space here. It's gorgeous. It's a lovely place to be. It feels very special. But that also makes you feel higher than you normally would with a higher belt line and such. Same thing with the Emira. The Emira has the sloping windows on the side here, which makes you feel like you're higher than you really are. These are much older seats, but they're actually great, man. The Emira has this weird thing on the headrest where it's kind of convex, and as a result, it kind of pushes your head forward a bit. But these seats I actually prefer, even though they're from the early 90s. I already feel like the stock NSX shifter is so good. And with this aftermarket shifter, it still feels great, although I do give a slight edge to the S2000 still. A little bit more directness, with it being right above the transmission tunnel in a front engine, rear-wheel drive vehicle like that. You have a much slower ratio than the Emira, because this is manual unassisted, but because it's unassisted, oh, beautiful throttle response for heel toe. But because it's unassisted, you get so much feedback through the wheel, more than the Emira, more texture, more load up. The lack of load up actually bothers me in the Emira. You don't have that here. She revs out to 8,000 RPM. This engine is down on power compared to the Lotus Emira, but it feels so much more special to ring it out, especially when VTEC kicks in. With these coilovers, it feels so much more planted as well. Stiffer ride, of course, but not punishing in any way. Now the cool thing is that both the NSX and the Emira, these two examples, are similar in price. The Emira right around $100,000 new MSRP, and this NSX market value probably around 70K, 75K. You add in all the mods that Fenton has done, it's right up there, right around 100K as well. Now I don't know the weight distribution in this car. In the Emira, it's 39 front, 61 rear. And the front end feels light. Similar thing here. I feel like the vibes of the two cars are very similar. They're fun when you're driving slow or fast. Transmission here, definitely one of the greats. Far better than what we have in the Emira. But the vibes are why I think these cars are more similar than different. Obviously, a car that's 30 years newer, more than 30 years newer, is gonna feel far safer, far more comfortable, far more refined, obviously. But when you strip that away, the underlying essence of both cars is quite similar. Great visibility, mid-engine rear-wheel drive, Front end gets a bit light. Double wishbone, all four corners. Fun to drive slow, fun to drive when you push it. Neither are cars that I think are going to excel on track. I've driven a stock Emira on track. I haven't tracked this. But cars that I don't think are going to be feeling at home on track, which is okay. What makes for a great car on the street doesn't always make for a great car on the track. Now, if it was my money, I would go Emira. Well, I obviously did go Emira, but the reason being isn't that I find it necessarily more fun or whatever to drive. It's more that I care more than the average car enthusiast about things like safety. That's why, as you guys can see, I have 3 new cars. They're all 2020 plus. I will be buying an S2000. I will be buying more used and, you know, more enthusiast cars in the future. But I also place a higher priority on things like safety. CarPlay is cool, not a huge deal breaker. You just put a phone mount there and problem solved. Reverse cam, all those things, those aren't high priority items on a car that I'm only going to drive, you know, on the weekends every now and then. For a daily, I care much more about that. But the essence, the underlying flavor of the driving experience is more similar than different between the NSX and the Emira. The NSX also has the nostalgia, the cool factor that I think the Emira, it may have these swoopy lines and be more impressive to non-car enthusiasts, right? But if you are a car enthusiast and you love JDM vehicles, this thing just looks so cool. It's so timeless. And of course, the Ayrton Senna connection. He actually owned a black one, but you may see a lot of photos of him with like the red one. I'm not sure if that was like a press car or just for when he was promoting the car with Honda, but he actually owned a black NSX. And as someone who is a huge Formula 1 fan and an Ayrton Senna fan, I think that someday it would be dope to own an NSX of my own. But my friends, let me know what you think of the 1991 Acura NSX versus the Lotus Emira. Which one would you pick? Leave a comment down below. And if you want your cars reviewed, visit us on jabalandcars.com. Fill out the form on the homepage. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in that next one.